Greetings and welcome to this edition of
Positronic.
I'm Barry P. Cook. The series premiere of Star Trek Discovery Season 3 is available on CBS All Access. I checked it out and I'm going to give you my review. Before we do that, though, I want to talk very quickly about some news that just came out yesterday. Fandom Wire is reporting that Tobey Maguire and Andrew Garfield, the actors who portrayed Spider-Man in Sam Raimi's Spider-Man trilogy, as well as the two The Amazing Spider-Man films, are going to, according to Fandom Wire, appear in Spider-Man 3 alongside Tom Holland at some point in the film as Peter Parker Spider-Man, both of them. So that should be interesting. Don't know if this is true. It's a rumor at this point, but Fandom Wire has had some scoops in the past, so we have to keep our eyes on that. But that'll be pretty interesting. It'd kind of be like a live action Into the Spider-Verse deal. And in Star Trek news, showrunner Mike McGann in Variety was talking about how Riker will be back in season 2, which we kind of knew because Boimler's now on the Titan. It would be kind of hard to show any of that without showing Will Riker. And Troy probably won't be back. Deanna Troy, or Deanna Troy Riker, will probably not be back. They haven't inked a deal with her, but we'll see. Maybe that'll change. He also said there probably will be other cameos from Next Gen folks, which would be cool. And he said that they're going to get into matters of sexuality in season 2, like who's dating who and, you know, who identifies as what. And that's a little worrisome, but it's a ways off. It's in season 2, so we don't have to worry about that right at the moment. Anyway, with that out of the way, let's talk about the season 3 premiere of Star Trek Discovery. So, you know where we left off the end of season 2, Michael and the Discovery blasted themselves 900 years into the future to the year 3188, to be precise, we now know. You know, we know from previews and so forth that this is a time where the Federation no longer exists. So I took notes during the episode, and I want to just basically read off my notes and discuss it a little bit. Again, this season, the show is visually stunning. It's been visually stunning from the get-go in terms of the cinematography, in terms of the, you know, the special effects. It's just visually majestic. And this episode was no exception. But now to get into the elements of the story. So, by the way, spoiler alerts, right? Massive spoiler alerts if you haven't seen it. We're going to talk about the episode, so now would be your time to bail. The ship that we see at the very beginning, the ship belonging to Book, is flying around space trying to escape someone that's trying to steal his cargo. And Michael comes out of the wormhole and crashes into the ship. This sends not only Michael, but the ship careening to the planet below. I found that a little strange because you would think that the ship has shields and that, you know, bumping into a person-sized object, you know, such as a person, wouldn't damage the ship to the point where it had to crash land. I wasn't buying that. And we understand from things that Michael says in the dialogue in the next sequence that the suit has something called impact shields. She has to turn them on so that she doesn't die when she crashes into the planet. Why weren't those shields on already? In other words, why would you want to fly through space, time, and not have impact shields on if you have them? It didn't make sense to me. Then she tries to do a number of things with the suit, you know, activate thrusters, activate this, activate that, and it keeps saying it can't do it. So she eventually does a full reboot to get those things to work. But before she does that, she is able to get the suit to turn on the heat shield. That didn't make sense to me. And, you know, it, of course, revealed that we're in the year 3188. So a little later on, Book mentions a dilithium recrystallizer. That's pretty cool. Um, you know, dilithium historically has not been something that could be recrystallized in the Star Trek universe, of course, until they changed that at the end of season 2 of Discovery. But at least now it's a thing that, it can be done, I guess, regularly, right? Not by this ad hoc process, such as what we saw on season 2 of Discovery. So then we also learned that dilithium just up and exploded one day, like most of it, and that this caused societal collapse in the Federation. And I can understand how that would happen. What I'm trying to figure out is whether or not that's supposed to be a message, like about the environment in modern times. They didn't belabor the point, so I can't really be sure, but I'm wondering if that's sort of a message in there. It could just be a plot device. But that was mentioned. And when Book finally tells Michael his name, by the way, we know he's Book at the beginning, but she doesn't. He says, Book. My name is Book. But he doesn't say James Book. Book. James Book. I kind of thought that was funny. That's because the name's not James, but Book, James Book, Bond, James Bond. Never mind. Once again, we find that the technology they're showing, in the year 3188, just as we saw on Picard, which is 100 years ahead of Discovery, doesn't really come off as all that more advanced than the technology they displayed on Discovery for 2 seasons. It looks to be about the same level of tech. I mean, there's some cool stuff where, you put your hand over a console and it bubbles up to kind of give you a tactile control thing. And we saw personal transporter devices that they kind of wear like badges, I guess. Some folks anyway, and well, Book has them. And, or is his on his arm? I don't know. He has a personal transport device. So that's certainly kind of new, but like not like far out from where technology is on Discovery and in the regular Discovery era. It sort of just fits in. You don't sit there watching this episode and say, wow, technology really leapt forward in 900 years. It's amazing. I mean, it's pretty consistent with the technology we've seen on Discovery and the technology we've seen on Picard. And the reason for that is they went balls to the wall with the technology on Discovery season 1 when they shouldn't have. So now, in other words, they treated it like it was the height of technology. How can I rephrase that? They made the tech so crazy that they did everything they could do with special effects and that they could possibly conceive of as far as, future tech. So they didn't leave themselves anywhere to go for any period beyond the time period in which Discovery season 1 and season 2 takes place. So as a result, technology on Picard, which is supposed to be 100 years more advanced, doesn't look like it's more advanced. Neither does the technology of 900 years in the future so far. And I just wish they had not gone crazy with the technology on Discovery season 1 and season 2, and then it would look, we could be amazed at the leap in technology, but it all looks the same. It looks the same to me. You could put Booker's ship right beside, the ships that we saw on Picard or the ships that we saw on Discovery season 1 and season 2, and you wouldn't think, wow, that's way out of place because the technology is so far advanced. It fits right in. So that's one of the complaints some of us fans have had about Discovery since the beginning, that the tech was too advanced, and it really shows when they try to do future tech that isn't more advanced than what's on Discovery season 1 and season 2. So I mentioned that Book has this personal transport device on his person that he's able to use to jump around from place to place without a transport pad, and take Michael with him, by the way, which is interesting. But how does that work? Like, how does that work? normally when you're doing something like that on Picard or any previous Star Trek series, there's a ship or a space station or something that is beaming you up. It's using their machinery to beam you up or beam you down. So, and it handles the coordinates and all that. So where is the transporter? Is it on his ship? And that as long as he's within a certain range of it, he can activate a transport and hop around. I don't know. He seemed pretty far away from his ship when he was at the Mercantile in the episode, the marketplace. And he was using it there. So I don't know. Maybe it takes advantage of, maybe it's like Wi-Fi. You can link into it, you can link into the local Wi-Fi and use your personal transporter. I don't know. Because the bad guys were using something like that as well. So what were they using? What's the range on those things? I don't know. It's just one of those things you're not supposed to think about, but like I was thinking about it. How do they work? And if he had that thing, Book, why did they walk all the way from his ship to the Mercantile? Why didn't they just transport there? Can they not transport that far? And if they can't, why could the bad guys transfer that far in the other direction? I don't know. We shouldn't think about these things, but there you go. We see Andorians and we see Orions in this episode. And, I don't think they ever showed Orions on the original series or on any of the other series for that matter, except for the Orion slave girls that they showed twice. So we've never seen Orion males. And we haven't seen that much of Orion females. So I don't know how they're supposed to look. They've shown them on other shows, but like, I don't know. There's nothing to compare them to really, I guess. But what I want to know is why weren't the Andorians from Enterprise good enough for Discovery? Why wasn't the makeup that they came up with the Andorians for Enterprise good enough? It was pretty good. I mean, very basic, but pretty good. I think, that one character on Deep Space Nine, not Deep Space Nine, on Enterprise, whose name I can't remember. I'll have to put it up like over here somewhere. He looked really great. And they somehow decided to take a departure from that makeup for Discovery, and I don't know why. It's not like it was something that needed to be done. I mean, again, it was a very basic makeup, but it looked right. Now these new Andorians have like facial appliances and that. I don't know. I don't like the look, but who knows what that's about. But yeah, the Andorians were the bad guys. The Orions were the bad guys in this. Also among the bad guys was another character. I don't know if you saw him. Morn! It was an actual Morn, probably, but it was a Morn species person. I don't know what species they are. I'm sure I'm sure that's listed somewhere. I'll have to look it up and I'll put it down here. So that was funny. Cute little Easter egg there. And of course, he doesn't say anything. He's one of the non-speaking bad guys. Something that was cool is that when Michael finally makes it to like a derelict station where there's this lone sort of Federation representative just hanging out there, hoping to one day meet someone else from the Federation, he tells her that there are 2 Federation ships within communications range or within sensor range anyway, but he doesn't say anything more about them. So I'm thinking that will come up in future episodes, and that's something that's good to know. So I decided that I like the Book character. I think he's a pretty cool character. We find out that he's going around and rescuing different species, or at least members of one species, and bringing them to a sanctuary where they won't be hunted or, otherwise taken into captivity. So he's a good guy. And I like that the actor did a fine job in the part. And I just like the character. So I'm looking forward to more from that character in future episodes. I think he's a good foil for Berman, which is good. And, I thought that this episode felt like Star Trek. I generally haven't liked Discovery very much, but this episode felt like Star Trek, and it felt a little bit more episodic. It felt like a contained one episode story where, you know, Michael finds herself stranded on a planet, runs into this guy. He's hauling a certain cargo. Other people are trying to get it. He's trying to keep it away from them and get to his destination, which ends up being this sanctuary. And at the same time, Michael is trying to contact Discovery, and she gets to a certain point in that process, and the episode ends. So it still has an overarching story, right? Because it's going to continue this story about how she's trying to help, how she's trying to reach her ship and other Federation people eventually, and so forth. But it just felt like this particular story had a beginning, middle, and end. And I like that. I like Star Trek that's episodic, that you can watch the hour episode and come away with it and go, huh, they told a little story. They said something, and I just like that. So hopefully that kind of thing will continue. On top of that, I want to say that I found myself while watching this episode thinking, if only they had started Discovery here. I mean, it's a little easy to say that because the ship hasn't shown up yet. And once the ship shows up, they'll be back to showing off all kinds of technology on the ship that shouldn't be there. And I'll, lose my enthusiasm all over again. But aside from that, as I said, not only did this feel like Star Trek because it was more episodic and so forth, but I just couldn't escape this feeling of, if only they had started Discovery here and never had bothered with this Klingon war thing, with the Klingons that don't look like Klingons, and with a ship that's, obviously far too advanced for its time period, then it might have had an easier go with the older fans from the get-go. Because, like I said, this episode felt like Star Trek. It was an encapsulated story for the most part. And there was none of that fourth wall breaking stuff where there's technology popping up that shouldn't be, present. Like I said, I noticed that the technology didn't seem 900 years advanced from what we've seen in Discovery before, but if they had started Discovery here, we wouldn't know what the tech was in the quote-unquote Discovery era from before. Like I said, once the ship comes back into the episodes, we're going to have to deal with that stuff again, because they're going to continue to use technology on that ship that it shouldn't have. But, maybe they'll write into the story that they gave it a massive upgrade with future tech. I don't know. That'll explain most of it, and then it won't be a problem. But, if they had started here, if they had used their imaginations a little bit, instead of just, hey, let's recycle the Klingons and let's, tread old ground by starting 10 years before Kirk, it might have been better, because even with advanced tech on Discovery that's too advanced for the period it's from, that could have been made a non-issue by saying that the ship was from the Picard era or just after the Nemesis era. And then everything would have been right with the world, but they didn't start here. You know what they did. Anyway, one episode in, I found myself liking Discovery more than I've ever liked it before, which was very little, if at all. So we'll have to see what comes next. Of course, this is just one episode, but I liked it. I liked the new character they introduced. As I said, it's visually stunning. I mean, it's just a pleasure to put your eyeballs on. There were a couple of quirky things that I found in the story, little nitpicky things, but that's not a big deal. But, I'm hopeful. Oh, the one thing I forgot to mention at the beginning is that trying to watch this episode at 6 o'clock this morning was a hell of an experience, because the app kept crashing on my smart TV. I shouldn't say crashing. It kept buffering and would just stop. And, it doesn't do that with other apps that I watch. Um, when I'm streaming Netflix on my cable box, it doesn't do that. When I'm streaming Hulu on this same TV, it doesn't do that. Only CBS All Access. Now, I tried watching it again a few hours later, and it wasn't doing that. So I don't know if there was still a lot of people watching at 6 o'clock in the morning, Eastern time, which I guess would have been 3 o'clock in the morning on the West Coast. But something was making it almost impossible to watch. It took like an hour and a half for me to watch an hour episode because I kept rewinding it to see if that would take the buffer out, and it would for a few minutes, but then it would buffer again. So this is part of the frustration with this show, right? That it's behind a paywall and you have to have a streaming app, and it's not just, sent out over regular CBS. The first season is now, of course, and it's been doing terribly, but we won't talk about that right now. I just wish they would get it over with and put the third season up. Just, you try the streaming thing. It's not working out. Just put the stupid thing on TV. That's what I think they should do, but we shall see. But get your act together, CBS, so that people can watch it at the same time as other people who might also be on the server at the same time and actually watch it without having to, rewind it so it'll get rid of the buffer. It's really annoying. I'm glad that we don't have to wait until, 7:30, 8:30 at night to watch it. I'm glad that we can just, get it whenever we want once midnight hits. But, because that was a pain in the neck. But if it's not going to play when many people are watching at the same time, that's really kind of lame. This was part one of the season premiere, which is called That Hope Is You. This was part one. Part two is next week. So I shall return, people, once that episode is out, and I'll give you my thoughts on it. Fingers crossed that it's good. Like this episode was, and we shall see. Until then, my friends, peace and long life.